Welcome to Duck Season Somewhere podcast. This episode is brought to you by the following sponsors. GetDucks.com, your proven source for the very best waterfowl hunting adventures. Argentina, Mexico, 6 whole continents worth. For 2 decades, we've delivered real duck hunts for real duck hunters. And USHuntList.com, because the next great hunt is closer than you think. Search our database of proven U.S. and Canadian outfits. Contact them directly with confidence. Trust is earned. By the numbers, 121 waterfowl subspecies bagged on 6 continents, 20 countries, 36 U.S. states, and growing. I spend upwards of 225 days per year chasing ducks, geese, and swans worldwide. And I don't choose shotguns for the brand name or the cool factor. Y'all know me way better than that. I've shot Benelli for over 2 decades. I continue shooting Benelli shotguns for their simplicity, utter reliability, and superior performance. Whether hunting near home or halfway across the world, that is the stuff that matters. Sit means sit and stay until it doesn't. No matter how well or how often trained, retrievers want those ducks as badly as we do, maybe even more. Chardog might be titled, but she's still just a dog. I'm over 50 years old and I still do dumb stuff, trust me. Retrievers are family. I wouldn't endanger my children near heavy traffic, and I'm not going to risk my dog jumping in front of blazing guns either. Gundog Outdoors' patented quick-release safety system is fully adjustable, tethers to any blind or stand, has titanium stakes for frozen ground, and a quick-release marine-grade shackle to quickly release Fido when the smoke clears. Visit gundogoutdoors.com. Connect with them on Instagram at Gundog Outdoors to see their growing line of Gundog safety and performance products. Enter hashtag GetDucks to receive 15% discount off of your first order. Mojo Outdoors, most recognized name brand decoy, #1 maker of motion and spinning wing decoys in the world. More than just the best spinning wing decoys on the market, their ever-growing product line includes all kinds of cool stuff. Magnetic pick sticks, scoot and shoot turkey decoys, much, much more. And don't forget my personal favorite. Yes, sir, they also make the one, the only world-famous Spoonzilla. When I pranked old Terry Dimon in Mexico with a smiling mallard, nobody ever dreamed it'd become the most talked-about decoy of the century. I've used their decoys worldwide, everywhere I've ever duck hunted, from Azerbaijan to Argentina. I absolutely never leave home without one. Mojo Outdoors, forever changing the way you hunt. Boss Shot Shell's copper-plated bismuth tin alloy is the good old days again. Steel shots come a long way in the past 30 years, but will never, ever perform like good old-fashioned lead. Say goodbye to all that gimmicky, high recoil, compensation, science, hype, and hello to superior performance. Know your pattern, take ethical shots, make clean kills. That is the boss way. The good old days are now. It really is duck season somewhere for 365 days per year. Duck Season Somewhere takes me year-round to worldwide destinations where I visit with the most interesting people. I'm your host, Ramsey Russell. Join me here to listen to those conversations. Welcome back to Duck Season Somewhere. And man, have I got a great one for you today. Look, there is a massive cold front sweeping across the country right now. I have not seen it this cold or felt it this cold during the duck season in a long time down here in Mississippi and Arkansas. And but this afternoon, Forrest and I drove over to the Arkansas Delta to meet with today's guest. And we're not hunting geese. We're not hunting ducks. You know, quote unquote, intelligent tinkering. A lot of intelligent tinkering goes into viable game populations, into great waterfowl populations. There's a lot of smart people, a lot of volunteers, a lot of effort, and a lot of science that goes into this wonderful resource that we all get to hunt. Today's guest is Dr. Doug Osborne, University of Monticello. University of Arkansas, Monticello is what I'm sitting here trying to think, right here in central Arkansas. Doug, how are you today?
Doing well. Thank you so much.
Good. Tell everybody what me and Forrest got to go do today.
Yep. Well,
old hat to you, but we had a great time.
You know, the Arkansas season appeared to be going to be a tough hunting season, and then the cold front come through and pushed birds here, and I got my banding crews out putting bait in the water, and we got traps slam full of mallard ducks. And so we are working on a winter banding program we've been doing for about 7 years, and my students are out on about 6 to 8, 10 different properties right now, trying to catch mallards. Purpose really is just to better understand distribution patterns, really, and any potential changes in distribution patterns. What can we know? What can we start to begin to learn from these bands being put on here? And it gives us good opportunity to get the students out, get them experience, get these guys trained up. So we got good waterfowl biologists in the future. And so we're banding. We're in the middle of it here. I think we're about to get shut down
because of the ice.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're not in 2-inch ice country, but we're fixing to get 2-inch ice. And
I believe it. You know, the landowner whose property we trapped this evening banded was saying it was the coldest maybe in his lifetime he's seen this area.
Yep, he grew up on this land.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's generational. You can tell with the love and time he's put into it. Let's break up a minute, Richard. Dadgummit. Y'all, I got a good friend named Richard Osborne, and I have called this man Richard about 13 times this evening. Dr. Doug Osborne. Doug.
Yes, sir.
Who are you?
Oh, man,
You're Richard to me, but who are you to everybody else? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah.
I've got to hear your story this afternoon. What led you to where you are now? Are you a duck hunter?
I am, yeah. I grew up hunting and diver ducks, really. Just passion for the outdoors. I grew up on a farm. You know, we grew up different than the kids now. You know, we grew up jumping off bales of hay in the barn and, you know, driving a truck at 13 years old across the farm. You know, we just grew up different. I grew up walking ditch lines trying to kill pheasants and quail and dragging deer home and duck hunting on the river. And so that's why I'm here. I mean, my passion for the outdoors and the shooting sports is why I'm where I'm at. You know, and just fall on a path through life that you just didn't know where you were going to end up. I mean, you know, getting through high school, had no intentions ever to even go to college. I was that guy that was just I was struggling to get through high school. I was working in a seed corn company. I loved it. I was working hard for the company. I felt like I did a good job for them. They respected me. I felt like it was the best company I ever worked for. I'm like, these guys really truly care about me, you know. And one day I was working third shift. I'm climbing in these grain bins, shoveling corn back in the middle so I can get as much of that stuff processed as I can that night. So when they come in the next morning, that they can start bagging it for seed corn. And working third shift, me and one other guy for 2 or 3 years after high school. I didn't go to college right away. I'm working in this place, making good money, being taken care of. And I don't know what it was, I got smacked in the forehead in the middle of the third shift in the middle of the night. Something just smacked me in the forehead. So you can't do this all your life. And so I started community college right in the town that I grew up in there, and it took me 3 years to get a 2-year degree. Had no idea what I was going to do. You know, I liked the biology classes, so I started saying, hey, you need to give me more biology. This is what I like. And finished up there, took all the classes I could there at that college, and moved on to Western Illinois University, Macomb. Got in the zoology program. You know, sort of enjoyed it, taking classes. I was doing okay. I wasn't a great college student, and my junior year, I decided, man, I gotta figure life out here. So I applied for a job out in New England, and I said, I got to get out of here. I hardly never been out of Illinois my whole life, and so I went and took a job in New Hampshire. Got set up with some guys. I was living in a house with 4 or 5 other guys, and they're out there banding. They're catching everything in the world they can possibly catch. They want to pull blood out of these things. They're pulling blood out of, mergansers, and they're pulling all these, golden eyes, birds out of the boxes. And I'm like, dude, this is awesome. You can do this for a living, for real, And so they're out in the backyard trying to catch bats and woodcocks as they're doing their spring migration or their spring nesting deal. And I'm like, this is unreal. I came back after that spring experience fired up. You wouldn't believe it. I could actually get good grades. So I come back, finished my bachelor's degree. I knew exactly what I was doing. I'm going. The company I worked for hired me back the next year, and the next year, I come back and I finished my last year of school, straight A's. Went right into a master's degree. Worked on a master's project.
With purpose now.
Yes, sir. I knew the purpose. It was on. Worked with common loons up in Voyageurs National Park and International Falls. I understood it. I mean, I was going. It was that first job experience. I said, this is it. Finished my master's in a year and a half. I mean, you don't do that. Most of my students now, master students, are taking 2 years. Some of them 2.5. Some of them 7. And so, that's just the way. But I was driven. Like that's why I'm where I'm at now, because I've been driven all my life. I'm not the smartest person out there, I promise you. But I'll work and get what I want to do. And so, worked through my master's, got my master's, applied for a PhD project. The very first one, interviewed for one, I got it. Went to Carbondale for 5 years, finished a PhD. Here we go.
You were telling me you had somewhere along your trajectory from Illinois to here, ended up in Knoxville, Tennessee, loved it. Your family was doing good, but there wasn't a lot of waterfowl out there.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Is that what led you to Arkansas? Was that passion for waterfowl?
Oh yeah, I've had passion for waterfowl in my life. My PhD was grassland songbirds and quail. Did some research on management, direct application management. How do we get this CRP back in better condition? And so finished up that, and then took a postdoc for a year and a half in Knoxville. Loved it. Loved life. I was busy as I've been so far in school. I was traveling a lot, and then postdoc I knew was an 18-month job. Started applying for professorships. I got a job. I interviewed and got a job offer in Iowa, and I said, man, Tiff and I are like, it was 45 minutes from my parents, and we're like, this is good, real good. This is going to work. And I go out there and I interviewed, and I nailed it, and they called me up and they wanted me to come. I said, my wife's not feeling it. We're not feeling it. And so I had a week of a salary left in Tennessee, and I turned down a job with a 6-month-old baby. And thinking, I'm calling my in-laws. I said, you know what, y'all better get us a room, because I'm not sure if I'm going to have a job here lined up now. And the day after I turned that job down, I got called from Arkansas. They wanted me to come interview here in Monticello, and it was a month out or so. So we made it work for a little bit longer. I found some money at Tennessee. They kept me on for a bit. I interviewed here in Arkansas, and they loved it. I came here with a mission. I told them, I said, I'm going to create a waterfowl program here. Arkansas is economically, biologically, just such an important place for waterfowl. For the people. It's the culture here. It's the tradition, right?
There is a duck hunting culture in Arkansas.
It is just the heritage, the hunting heritage of waterfowl here. And I'm thinking, when you're a researcher, you got to find a niche. I'm not going to go to Arkansas if there's to try to do waterfowl research if the best waterfowl researcher in the world is in Arkansas? And so how am I gonna work with him or compete against him or whatever? So I said, there's a niche in Arkansas. This is going to work. And I had a passion for it anyway. That's what I wanted to do. And I said, I'm going to come here. I'm going to create a program. I am going to create a program. And we're going to focus on waterfowl in this state. There's a lot of questions that we can answer. And that's what we've done. That's what we're working on doing.
Fantastic. Well, what questions are you answering, and how are you answering them?
Oh, I'm interested in the migration stuff. I am interested in very applied science. I mean, these are, we got people asking lots and lots of questions. I mean, the questions that everybody's answering, the questions that are going to probably drive our hunting regulations in a few years. This hunting pressure thing is going to drive regulations at some point.
Ain't lying.
The timing of migration and distribution is going to drive our hunting regulations at some point. So we're getting ahead of the curve. We're trying to provide some information on, what can we learn from this? And so we are working on, this banding program is providing us, a lot. It's providing us a lot of insight on distributions, timing of migrations. We're trying to look for changes. Back in 1960s, the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission banded like 3,000 mallards a year in Arkansas for 3 or 4 or 5 years in a row in the 60s. And then there was a gap. There was no winter banding. And then in the 80s, the Game and Fish Commission stepped up, and they were banding several thousand mallards a year again in the 80s. You can pull all this data all this data from the banding program is public information. It's federal data. Excuse me. And so in the 80s, they banded several thousand a year. And then there was a big gap again and nothing. So I thought, if we band a bunch of birds in Arkansas now, and right now, and we start looking at the timing of their arrival here, their distribution, where they're harvested, then we can compare it to the 60s and see if we got what kind of changes. What do we see? Is there patterns and stuff that we can tease apart? We compare it to the 80s. And so that's what we're in the midst of doing. But we're building a relatively long-term data set. We're 6-7 years into this here now. I think it's time that we can start teasing apart some of this. So I'm working on trying to get the money to hire some students now to start to analyze this data. I think we got a good couple of years. We banded 4,000 birds last year.
Wow. Mostly mallards. I know you were telling me out in the field, y'all target mallards. Not all mallards, but that's what y'all are targeting.
Yep, that's what we're targeting. We're targeting it because not because I'm a mallard snob. We're not. We're targeting that because that's what my research questions. I'm trying to be the most efficient we can in the field to sample, the birds that we're trying to actually analyze. We're going to band everything we catch. And somebody else is the researchers and the policymakers, and the managers are going to potentially use that data down the road, but what we're looking at using is mallards, so that's why we're certainly focused on
mallards are the most ubiquitous duck in the hunter's bag. That coast to coast, north to south. Mallards.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the king of North American birds in terms of regular hunter. So it makes sense that would be the focus.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it does.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of what are you seeing now versus the 60s versus the 80s? What are some of these important things that are breaking out? Some of this applied science stuff you're seeing.
I really hadn't got there, honestly.
You're getting there.
I think there's changes.
Changes.
I think we got the data now to look at it, and so my next step is getting somebody in there to start thinking about this. And I had a young lady working for me about 2 years ago that had some extra time, and she really started drilling into this. And we're trying to look at, what can we learn about phylopatry, and what's the return rate to the same, what proportion of birds are coming back to the same area, and when you say area, how big is that area? Is it a 160 acre block of timber, or is it a 6 county radius area? Like, we're trying to get at that scale. Like,
what is phylopatry? Just for anybody listening, what is phylopatry?
Just the tendency of these birds to come back to the same area because they're comfortable with it. You know, you're going to go to the same restaurant, same 3 or 4 restaurants, and because those are your favorite places, you're familiar with them, right? And so that's, I mean, these birds, we got, this understanding that birds probably go back to the same place each year to breed and that sort of thing. Well, do they go to the same field? Well, I bet you they probably do. But it's a tough question really to put our thumb on. And so that's what we're kind of looking at with this. I mean, we get a lot of birds that are harvested in the same block of woods that we banded them in before. And so those are the sorts of things we're kind of looking at. Mm-hmm.
It's extremely important to me because what you're explaining is you would think that birds that leave a cohort, populations, generational birds that leave a part of Canada come to not just Arkansas, but to a specific property, a specific WMA, a specific river bottom. And that's what y'all are really trying to key in on.
Exactly, yeah. We absolutely are. And this started a few years ago small. I mean, Ramsey, we're working on private funding. I mean, that's what the bottom line is boiled down to. As I'm working off private funding, and I'm expanding. We're banding on. We got 11 sites pretty much right now. We're not all of them right now because some birds aren't cooperating and those sort of things. But I pretty much got 11 sites. We got people in Mississippi. I got a text message just a bit ago. They had 75 mallards in a trap. So I'm doing my best to get a good distribution across the South because, all the mallards in the world aren't coming to Arkansas. And so I'm not looking at just a small, I'm looking at this whole distribution at the population level, like the whole group of mid-continent mallards that are coming down the Central Flyway, right, and Central Mississippi Flyway, and they're wintering in this part of the world. And we can't just focus on a couple of small farms and there's, pieces of land that's holding a bunch of birds. That's not my intention. My intention is to find, birds scattered across the southern part of the states, and we band a good, number of birds in each one of those, so we can start to see, are those Mississippi birds going to come back to there? What's the, how many of those will be harvested at some other sites, And so it's going to give us a real good thing. We're working now. We've done a really good job. I've got some organizations that's really contributed and it's been helping us here in the last 2 years, and we were able to expand. And we're expanding spatially to try to get a better representation of the overall population. And so that's where we're at on the banding.
Doug, we all know that they band a lot of ducks and have forever up north in Canada and the Dakotas. Why is it important to band ducks on the wintering ground, and how is it different?
Yeah, that's a good question. Historically, the service and the state and federal agencies set up banding stations historically to say, hey, this banding data is going to give us a lot of information on distribution. It's going to give us information on harvest and survival and all that. This is going to be the data we need to make effective policy and harvest decisions. So this is, this is going to tell us how many birds we can harvest. We need this data. It's important. This was back in the 30s, right? Mm-hmm. And so the service and the states and, 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s are setting up these permanent banding stations. We got to get slap dab right in the middle of the mallards on the breeding ground. That's where we got to do it. We're going to build these permanent banding stations. They're going to be long-term data sets. This banding data set is, in my opinion, one of the strongest long-term data sets we have for waterfowl. We got harvest surveys, we got, wing surveys. They're looking at changes in age ratios and sex ratios and harvest and all that. That stuff's really important, but the aerial surveys is been some interesting long-term data too that's come and gone, and there's gaps in there, and but overall we got 2 or 3 pretty decent long-term data sets. They're not perfect. all data has biases, and there's some challenges and limitations to all of our data sets, but we only got a few long-term data sets, and those are the ones we need to look at change through time. That's all we have. And so, they banded for many, many years up there, and some years, when they originally started, they're banding 90% of the birds they catch are mallards, right? The mallards are shifty on the breeding ground just like they are down here, The mallards shift out of the areas that used to be dominated. Now they're catching 90% blue-winged teal and instead of 90% mallards. But they set these permanent banding stations up so they can't move.
Right.
Okay. And so on our end down here, I can move, right? We can be mobile. That's why these traps are so small and light. And so I can roll these things up, and a few years ago I could carry one by myself soaking wet, but I struggled tonight in the cold. But we can be mobile. I can grab these things up, and I can be up the road banding on somebody else in tomorrow if I need to be. And so, the last couple, this last year with COVID, a lot of the banding, we know the Bebop survey got shut down because of.
And it looks like it's going to be shut down this year for the second consecutive year.
Those are data that we rely on, right, for making harvest decisions. And so I think our data the last couple of years for banding, could potentially be a real good supplement to some of the banding data over the last couple of years, because the banding programs just didn't happen on the breeding ground, or they caught, or in those years that they really struggled to catch mallards, and mallard, band numbers is really what's given them the information they need for harvest decisions. I think our banding data here is going to supplement that on the population end.
Well, I was just fixing to say, you've got such mobility and such an opportunity, because you especially this time of year in the winter, there's big mallard migrations down here, and you can target those mallards. And it seems to me you can have a better catch rate of mallards than maybe they can in permanent stations in Canada. And really get that mallard data, because as I understand, you explain to me, I've just heard that the mallard data seems to drive the machine, not just for mallard modeling, but for other species. So mallards are important to North American waterfowl management. There seems to be, I'm asking, a lot of advantage to banding on the wintering ground versus permanent stations in Canada.
Yeah, mallard numbers do drive a lot of other species, but we're getting a better understanding, as we talked a bit ago, about pintails, off the record here. But pintail, they're starting to get some of that modeling down a little bit better. They're targeting those. They know they need to better their improvement of estimates on those. And so, but mallards are important in this situation. We can be mobile. We can be much more efficient. We've been catching birds for 6 days. We've almost caught 3,000 mallards in 6 days.
My goodness. And how would that compare to, and I have no idea, how would that compare to, you were talking about a transition up in Canada from mallard to mostly blue wings. Now, I know when I banded up there in 2001, we caught 7,500 ducks and 5,800 of them were blue wings. I mean, gosh, 3,000 mallards in 6 days is amazing.
I believe 2 years ago during the banding on the prairies, I think they may have caught 4,000 or 5,000 mallards during the entire effort. During the entire effort across the whole scale, and I think at a little bit bigger scale here. That's spatially I got to look at I got to separate. I got to get into Mississippi. I got to get into other. Northern Arkansas all the way through the Delta. I got to get in the Red River Valley and, in Southwest Arkansas. We got to get in Louisiana, and we do. We got a good partner, down there, Paul Link.
Absolutely.
Well, and he catches lots of birds. And so we need more. We need other states on board. We need other, universities contributing to this. Is way bigger than me and my students.
Ooh, that's a lot to digest. That's a whole lot to digest. I got a question for you. True or false? Based on your observations, based on your experience down here with mallards in the Deep South, the mallards are shifting west. The mallard migration is shifting drastically west towards the central flyway.
I say false.
Why?
We have no data. We don't have the data on this yet. I don't believe it's not a shift. I mean, shift's a tough word. Think about a shift. I mean, if you're going to shift, if you're going to shift 5 feet over there, you're not here anymore, and that's not what we're seeing. We're not seeing the population. It's dynamic. I mean, the population's dynamic. The population has to change. There's every year water's going to be potentially in different areas, right? You got different amounts of rainfall. You got the river floods or it doesn't flood, and so the birds are going to come down here, and there's no water there. They got to go somewhere else. They got to adapt to the changes on the landscape. They're going to come down here, and there's an ag field that's been flooded the last couple of years, and it's not flooded this year. And so they got to be shifty, and they're sampling specialists. They got to find food, and that's dynamic on the landscape. There's so many things. There's hunters everywhere, and so things are gonna change. I don't believe we have the data to say there's any kind of shift in distribution. I think there's huge changes. I think there's changes in the timing of the migration. If you would ask me 2 weeks ago, how many ducks we got in the state, I'd looked at AGFC's aerial surveys and say, I think we're probably down. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you what, we caught 800 mallard ducks last night, and I seen more mallards today than I've seen in a long time. And I can promise you this front, we are slam full of mallards. So to tell me that mallards don't go to Arkansas anymore is wrong.
Where your boys were saying, we drove into that first trap site, and the sky was full of ducks, and they were getting out of a slough over there to the left that they had not been in yesterday, which we all were talking probably new birds just piling in ahead of this front.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, so this weather moves birds, no doubt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we all know that.
Yeah, we know that. Gosh, man, we used to get these Arctic fronts, right? In November, we get that first Arctic front across the Great Plains, right? And we didn't get that this year, right? And then again in January, you get another one of those, and we get a couple of different pushes of birds, and it didn't happen this year till
no, it hadn't happened
February.
In a while, yeah.
And it's happening big time now for sure, because we're fixing to be 9 degrees here in the next couple of days. But man, I can't support the shift west. Do I got birds that are banded in Arkansas that are being harvested in Oklahoma? Absolutely. Do I expect anything different? No. Why would I? I mean, just because it's in the Central Flyway, if you look at the flyways, that's an administrative line that separates a couple of states. These birds are going to migrate through that region, and they're going to sample and hit the resources and stuff that they need. And I think they got high levels of phylopatry again. They're going to come to those same sort of areas, but there's things that's going to, it's going to get them off track. And so I don't believe there's any kind of shift. I think there's changes in the timing, in the chronology of their migration, yes.
Well, speaking of that, and this isn't so much band data, it's just your working relationship, I'm going to call it, with mallard ducks and migratory birds that are coming down into Arkansas pursuant to banding. But you see, you were explaining earlier about these waves of birds. Yes, when this cold front hits, lots of birds come down, but there are birds coming down in October, November regardless. And you've seen that adult mallards or whatever, they're coming down to their old haunts. Mm-hmm. Can you comment on that?
Yeah. I think our band data has given us some really neat information on that. You talk to the hunters. I mean, the hunters educate me just as I learned a ton from these guys who have been hunting this land for a long time. They say, those are our birds. They're coming in from the west. They're always roost over there. They always work the tree line, the treetops that same way. I know it's our birds. And then there's other days that they just act different. They got to pull them down a different way. They're higher, whatever that might be, right? These hunters know when it's their birds. And so, I feel like our band data is starting to tell us that we have all these little pockets of birds all over the landscape, and everybody kind of has their birds. And I bet you their birds are mostly older birds that's been coming here for a while. They're smarter than a whip, you know. You can't kill them, but I tell you what, they're going to be in my trap, and we're catching those stinking things. 2, 3, 4 years later, we're catching them alive with a leg band on that we put on a few years ago. You know, and so, but even the best hunter out there can't kill them. They're smart, they're smarter than we think they are, but they want that corn and they know I'm going to let them go, so they're okay to get in that trap. They don't bother them none.
That reminds me of a story you told me out there on the levee this afternoon about a landowner's son shooting a widgeon.
The whole mallard thing. When somebody says, I killed one of your bands in the woods, same woods we banded, it doesn't surprise me a bit. The guy, Will Max calls me up on the phone, excited as can be. You can probably feel the energy in my voice when you talk to Will. He's got the energy in his voice too. This old boy, I couldn't even understand him. He's from South Arkansas. He talks a little different than I do, And he's going a mile a minute on the phone. I'm like, Will, I can't understand what you're saying. He said, little Andrew killed a widgeon today that you banded on our property 4 years ago, a widgeon. I said, where were you hunting? He said, we were hunting in the grass. We caught that thing probably 7 feet away 4 years ago. We caught that thing 7 feet away from where his son killed that thing.
4 years ago,
a
7
widgeon.
feet away.
A widgeon. Like, we all know about the mallards, and it's amazing is what it is.
What are some of the other interesting things you have caught or seen pursuant to this banding study? I mean, it's got to be tons. I know you've caught hybrids because I follow you on social media.
Lots of interesting things all the time. Yes, hybrids. Old bands, money bands that were relatively old that we've caught, and we report those. We get a bird already banded. We catch a lot. I bet you we catch a lot more banded birds alive than people actually, than that landowner on that property actually kills. It's just, it's interesting, and we catch our own birds a lot. I mean, we really do. Other unique things. Just abnormal wing colors, and Brandon actually caught on this property the other night a hen mallard that had the white patch, and the kids posted that on the Instagram page there the other day. But you could see that on there. But it's just some neat things that drive a lot of questions. The kids are like, I get text messages about 11:30 every night of how everybody did, and look what we caught. What's this? And they banded it, but we got to kind of figure out what it is, and we report it through BBL that what we caught. But there's some things that people don't even know what they catch. So
sure, change subject just a minute, because when we think of bands up in Canada, I know that there were a lot of studies way back when about migration, where the birds are going, how they're migrating, corridors, flyways, things of that nature, and it evolved to where really whether it's wood ducks in Mississippi or Canada birds, whatever, I know that BBL really does predicate a lot of harvest data, hunter harvest data, population dynamics, and things of that. But there's more to that. I noticed when we caught this. This goes to some of your research, what I'm getting at. We caught some of those, that hen mallard, those hens. Wow, they didn't just get aged and sexed. You did a lot of biometrics on them. Why?
Yeah.
What did you do? What biometrics did y'all do, and why did you do it?
Yeah, we had a project a couple of years ago. We were measuring some birds from hunters, and we started thinking about, we need let me step back. The hens we're measuring because we're interested in trying to predict how much fat they got on their body, right? And so you think about these migratory birds, they get down here early, they eat a bunch, they put on some extra fat, so when it gets 9 degrees and we get 2 inches of ice, they can live through it. You know, because these mallards this week, when it gets to be 9 degrees and we got ice, they're not going north. And there ain't a whole lot of room to go south. And so they need to figure out how to live. And so they got extra lipids, they got extra fat on their body. They gotta live through the rest of this winter. And they got to be healthy to get to the breeding grounds to be successful. And so we're trying to really pin this down is how much fat are they supposed to have on their body about this time of year? You know, and really what it boils down to is how do we got enough food on the landscape to keep these birds healthy so they can get back to the breeding grounds and produce nests, okay? And so that's where we're looking at. We found a way to predict how much fat they have on their body. You know, we can go to, you know, they tell you what's the BMI score or whatever. You're obese. I know I'm obese. You know, that everybody's obese except, you know, that's just the way that score works. And you're like, you know what, you're. Let me not go there.
But in the wildlife world, fat is good. For a hen mallard, fat is good.
I mean, we think so, yeah. I mean, for survival, but fat is hard to migrate with, right? It's hard for these birds to migrate north with extra fat. So where's the balance? How much do they need to get back north, be healthy, and start to build?
Lay a good clutch, thin molt.
And lay the clutch. So really what I'm trying to get at is I'm trying to have, I found a way. In fact, one of my grad students, Catherine Cody, has found a predictive model to predict how much fat is on these hens. And so the 4 metrics that go into that model is what we measured today. Okay, we put the soft tape measure around the chest of that bird to measure girth. Okay, that's one of the variables that's real predictive in our model. And so we measured these just on the hens today so that we can come up with an idea. It's going to give us a scale. And we're going to look at birds down here, and we're going to look at birds in central Arkansas, and we're going to look at birds in Mississippi and see if the patterns of this index are different. And they are, because we know there's more food on the ground than some, you know, the food's not spatially laid out in the landscape real nice. There's areas of a lot of food and areas of little food. So if we find some spatial variation in lipid content of birds right now, maybe we can link that back. There's lots of other things that go into this, but maybe we can link it back to food on the landscape. And maybe there's some areas in the region that maybe just don't have enough food, you know, and those are ones we can focus on management-wise.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. You were also telling me something about how they go and ban birds up in Canada. There's a lot of hatchier birds, a lot of baby birds getting banded. Presumably, a lot of those are going to die because they're young and dumb, flying the decoys up north. Versus winter banded birds down here. Because like today, and I asked you about this because I had banded birds way back when, and there were 2 age classes, hatchier and adults. But here y'all did something different, you know, and I hadn't seen it done that way, so I actually had the metrics trying to remember it because they may have been hatched this year, but now they're a young adult.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and what can y'all find, or what are you looking for differently in terms of harvest and survival and filling gaps between Canadian birds, those banded models versus these on the wintering ground?
Yeah, I mean the pre-season banding is pre-hunting season. So the banding that happens after hatch, the birds can't fly, lots of juveniles, it happens on the prairies. You know, they band them immediately, and hunting season starts right away. So they can look at survival rate. What proportion of the bands are going to, you know, gives us the idea of survival, and says, okay, well, it gives us a harvest rate. All right, we harvesting 10% of the population as they band them up there. But they lose track of those birds because because once February, we don't get recoveries, right? They're banning those birds in August, and there's no more recoveries after February. They'll catch some more alive on the prairies, but there's a time from February to August that we're not sure what survival rate is. And I think from my winter banded birds, I can start to get at survival rates, natural survival rates during that breeding season, during the summertime. That's just it's a gap in our understanding. It's a gap in our knowledge of the life cycle of these birds in survival. In survival, and we know there's predators and there's other natural mortality that's happening, and we're trying to get at some of that.
More than duck hunting, get ducks is the lifestyle we all enjoy. It really is always duck season somewhere. Check out our caps, t-shirts, hoodies, and more at our new GetDucks.com store. That's GetDucks.com/store. Thank you for listening to and for supporting this podcast. And remember, life short, get ducks. Very good. And how might what you're seeing, what I saw firsthand, a bird in hand through your eyes or the eyes of your students aging those birds, how might that quell the myth that, hey, all the baby birds are getting shot before they come to the deep south?
Yep. Yeah, that's interesting because the best data set, I think, to start to look at that is the wing bee. If as a hunter, the service, calls you and asks you to fill out this sheet and tell us every day you hunt and how many birds you harvest. I'm begging the hunters to do it. If they get drawed, it's supposed to be a random draw. Please do this. This is important information. All right, and they're going to ask you what you harvest, and it just gives them an idea, of harvest, and then you may get drawn for the wings. They may ask you to clip the dead wing off and send it in every bird that you harvest. All right, and as the service gets together and starts to look at those wings, they're going to tell you that we're harvesting more of our hatchy or young birds further north, right? The further south you get, there's less. They're more susceptible. They're more susceptible to the
hunting methods.
Yeah, the methods and all that. And so we're just naturally going to shoot less juveniles down here. All right. And so these guys that are shooting mallards at the beginning of hunting season, I can bet your butt that most of those are adults. Mm-hmm. They're ones that probably didn't breed, or breed and they were not successful and they left out early. I bet you those younger birds are just staying back. The migration is real still for those birds because they hadn't experienced hunting yet. Those young birds hadn't experienced the hunting. They're going to get pushed by weather. Migration is going to be like a real migration. We got mallards that do a not real migration, mm-hmm. if that makes any sense. It doesn't. I'm trying to make sense, but in my head it don't make sense. But we got mallards that are going to come here in November. It doesn't matter if the weather pushes them or not. And so, we're gonna shoot less juveniles in the south part. And so tonight we caught that pile of mallards in that trap. You see how many hatchery birds we had? We had a bunch of juveniles.
Bunch of them. They
got pushed down here with this front. They're still alive. They're out there. But I bet you now.
But to a layman, they got green heads. Mm-hmm. They're not looking at some of the upper secondary coverts and some of the details y'all are. To them, it's an adult bird because it's got a big green head.
Yeah. These birds they're molting. They're molting all year. You think about a mallard like during migration, and they get down here and they got to start replacing some feathers. They're getting ready for breeding season. They're not replacing flight feathers, but little ones, right? These little coverts that are covering them up. We can look at the fine detail on those and identify their age. And so the difference that you were talking about there, hatch year versus adult, and now we're just calling them second year. It's just because of the way that the Bird Banding Lab reports this thing. It's a calendar year thing. So January 1, it now all of a sudden becomes a second year bird because it's switching to. So it was born in August, right? And August to December, if I would have caught it any time there, it's a hatch year. But then, and then January 1 all of a sudden becomes a second year bird because it's just by the calendar. And so that's what we're reporting is, the second year birds as we catch them in this, in February here they were born this last year. They're 1 year old birds.
you know, this major cold front that's hitting notwithstanding, just wipe it off the table. There's been a perception for decades that the ducks are showing up later. And I think a lot of that perception is driven by the observation that a week or two after duck season, you go out there to your duck hole and it's black with ducks. Mm-hmm. Is that a later migration thing, do you think? Is it truly a later migration?
Sometimes. This year probably yes.
This year for sure. But you know, you get on.
Yep.
Why does it seem that ducks are showing up in February? Why do you think it might be that ducks are showing up in February instead of January 15th?
We're doing some research that I hadn't mentioned much of yet is satellite transmitters. And these things are really interesting. They've come a long way. The technology's slightly getting better now. These things are $1,100 a piece, and they collect GPS locations, and they store it on board on a chip. And then when this device comes in contact with the cell tower, it just dumps the data, just like a text message, through the cell tower, and then I can get it on my phone right now. And so these things are giving us some neat information here. I mean, we can track these things live nearly, the battery gets wore out in the cold and no sunshine. They're solar powered and they charge up. And so we started a study this year. We put a bunch out before the hunting season started. And we caught them. We caught some on some private land before season. We caught some on the sanctuaries, on refuges, and we just been tracking them. And so these are just sort of anecdotal things that we've caught so far. I got a pile of grad students working on this stuff and doing a great job on it. And so, anecdotally though, I mean, this is we got birds that are hunkered down. These guys, we're catching them in November. And they're living all hunting season within a 8 mile radius, 5 to 8 mile radius of where we caught them. And they're living.
Are they
in 2 or 3
exploiting everything within 5 miles, or they seem to be hopping specific properties or to specific properties?
I specific spots over and over and over.
What might those spots have in common?
They're coming off the sanctuary. They're going into rice fields. But I can draw you a triangle where this bird that's been living since November, it's been going into 3 spots over and over and over again. And you start to think about the spots and you drive to them and you look out there and there's this duck blind in the middle of the rice field. You're like, how can they not kill this bird yet? Well, you look at the time in which his bird was on the thing, and the thing's sleeping out there every night. I can promise you they eat all the rice out of that field, but they're not going in there when that hunter's there.
Yeah.
And so, these birds are hunkered down to getting at your question. Everybody. February 10th.
By hunkered down, you mean hunting pressure? The bombs are dropping. Man, these things are hunkered down. For their lives.
They know how to live. They know where they're going to live until those guns stop firing. And so, to get at your question, February 10th comes around and you're, my phone rings off the hook. Oh, we got ducks in our woods. You got to come over here and band them. I ain't seen this many ducks all year in the woods. That's because you've been sitting in there shooting at them. They've probably been living within 5 miles of you. Right now, it's a different story because we're covered up in birds, but most years when you don't get those late winter pushes, those birds they're sampling experts. Ramsey, we got mallard ducks that's living in that triangle for 50, 60 days, 70 days, and about 4 or 5 days after the duck season ends, guess where they're at? They're all over the place.
Yeah.
I got transmitters all over the place right now, and they're not where they were the entire duck season. The pressure from the hunt, the shotguns going off over and over, and just the pressure of the boats. I don't band.
And the ATVs.
And the ATVs.
And the lights.
Right. And just in all the little mallard machines that spit whatever they spit in there.
Spit and kick
everything.
And flap them, yeah.
And so, I mean, they're adapting to the pressure. They're rising to the challenge. The populations are going to do fine as long as we don't drain the prairies and kill the breeding, which is another topic for another day. That topic there, on my opinion, starts to look at carrying capacity of hens. We say, why there's so many drakes to a hen? What's the hen drake ratio looking like? Why is it so heavy drakes? Some of that stuff may boil down to carrying capacity. What do we got? What's the breeding grounds? How much room, how much capacity can they have for hens to breed when we keep getting rid of more and more and more wetlands and grasslands? There's nowhere for them to go.
Wow. Now that's a very, very sobering thought you just brought up.
I completely switched gears on that whole deal.
Well, no, but that's good. I mean, we're not just talking about carrying capacity of a total population. We're talking about hens, places to nest. Wow.
I'm not geneticist, not the right word. There's some natural, maybe there's natural selection going on when there's not enough places to live, to breed. Maybe there's some sort of selection process in the genes of these ducks. Maybe they're not even, they say that they're 50-50 out of the egg, but I'm not sure. I mean, they say that's what it is. I wonder if it still is. I don't know.
My understanding from way back when I was your student's age, not an old man, it was that it takes a lot more energy to make a hen egg than a drake egg, and that the more fit, the more lipid, the more those BMI type stuff you were talking about, the more hen eggs she might be capable of producing. That was my understanding, but I don't know.
Yeah,
back on hunting pressure.
Yeah, because I'm
starting to
get out of my league.
No, man, you got my head. I love it when my head's spinning over these good conversations. But back on hunting pressure, you hear so many people this day and age. So many people, especially now that everybody can speak on their cell phone, on the social media, and blare out to the world what their thoughts are. They're pointing fingers at everybody. They're pointing fingers at everybody why we don't have ducks. But they're not pointing their fingers at themselves about, hey, maybe we're putting just too much freaking hunting pressure on these birds. And I just, we travel and we go places. Mexico. You go to Mexico, you don't see the number of birds in one place that we saw getting off either of those two holes today. All the birds up in the sky, I mean bazillions of them this afternoon, they're coming into water. But the distinction is those birds are not being hunted for weeks at a time. They're complete. So I can draw a completely unpressured duck that I've experienced elsewhere in the world versus 21, 22 states hunted this year, pressured birds. And your data is some of the anecdotal type stuff you're seeing. It shows that, doesn't it?
Yeah. These transmitters are really starting to fill in, and it's things we all kind of know, right? But to make good decisions, we need to be driven by science, and so we're hoping that that these data can provide that insight and potentially change in the future so that we can conserve this resource into the future. I mean, we really need to start thinking about this and not drive this thing into the ground. I mean, hunt pressure is a real. Everybody knows it's probably an issue, but it's not their issue. It's everybody else. Everybody else has got to do different, not them. But I think we just need some more data to try to make those good decisions. And these transmitters are telling us that these hunting pressure birds are hunkering down, and then hunting season opens up and the birds are moving. They're moving around the landscape. They're looking. They've been feeding in the same fields all year, and by the end of January, they're pretty depleted. I mean, the landscape. Everything's down here trying to eat all winter, just to live, and so these transmitters are really starting to answer some of lots of questions. Nocturnal, all of our birds are nocturnal now. Yeah, they're nocturnal when they're when there's a full moon, but I can tell you that they're eating a lot at night. If a full moon or not, they're going in these open fields, and we got information. We got accelerometer data that gives us. It's an interesting piece of little data that we're still trying to figure out, but it tells us the sort of angle at which that transmitter is sitting on the bird's back. So if it's sitting flat, it's going to give me an XYZ of this. Mm-hmm. If it's tipped up and down and it's up and up, if the transmitter is up, it's going to give me a different read. And so I can tell you how much proportion of the time that mallard's tipped up versus sitting flat versus some other things. And so we're still trying to figure out that accelerometer stuff. But it gives us an idea, that these birds are spending a lot of time at night on feeding. They're going into the woods. They're not going in there to feed because they've been feeding all night. There's food sources in there. Acorns are important. It's going to give them a good different bit of, amino acids and different things that they're going to get out of that than they are other grains. But they are feeding at night. We do see different patterns of nocturnal movements. We know that. All that stuff's starting to come out of this, these data. And so hopefully we can use it. Hopefully managers can read it and policymakers can use this stuff, right, to think about what we can do with regulations so that we can ensure successful hunting moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that brings up, when you talk about hunting and hunters, you way back when you said something I just found so interesting. We've been talking for a while about a lot of very valuable information that your research is generating. And it's so valuable that as much as you may be answering, there's a whole lot more questions beyond that we've been talking about. But one of the things that just strikes me, slaps me across the face, the fact that you said something earlier about most of your research is being privately funded by, I'm assuming, landowners like this right here. Is that what I understood you to say? A lot of being privately funded.
Yes, sir. A good bit of it, and even the funding that runs through the nonprofit groups that support us. And I got Fish and Wildlife Service money. They're contributing. They're all interested in these questions. We're asking the right questions.
Everybody's on the same team.
We're not answering those questions at the scale we need to because of where the funding's coming from, because it's so heavily private. I get people not wearing me out, but I get lots of requests through Instagram. How can we help? I ain't got much. I got $25. That's how I can help you with the banding program.
Heck yeah.
And so we've created a foundation account at the University of Arkansas main campus in Fayetteville. It's a Waterfowl Research Foundation account. Folks can donate to that thing, and it's 100%. They get tax papers from the university at the end of the year.
Do they log into a website to help out, or how does that work?
We don't have it that way set up right now. They gotta email me, I guess, and I gotta send them a form, because the form has 2 little boxes for you to sign, fill out with your name and address, because you got to the university got to send you tax papers because it's a foundation. And so anyway, there's ways to contribute, and it all helps. It keeps our students busy, and it really, helps us, to keep this stuff going. And so I don't want to say it's. I bet you. I'm probably over at 70-80% private funded, but there are agencies and organizations that we work with that I value their opinion, both on the questions and stuff that they're looking for us to answer, and they contribute as well. And there's other universities we're working with. We're collaborating. We're dumping data together to answer questions at a bigger scale. We're done asking questions, about this little group of mallards here. We got to look at it at a broader scale.
Much, yep.
The Tennessee Tech University has a real good program as well. They're putting a couple hundred transmitters on mallards a year. They're answering some really good questions. If you think about, if we get about 4 states down here to start putting out a couple hundred transmitters, we can start to really think about some of these things at a bigger scale instead of what my little refuge of birds is doing. We're done with that. We're beyond that.
The research demands that we scale and do more.
Absolutely, that hit it spot on, because we're at a point we're managing a midwinter population for some hunters that are passionate about what they do. Right, landowners like this are putting so much money into their properties and their investments, and the public land hunter like me, where I'm going with that is beyond me right now. The public land hunters, what I'm saying is we're a little worried about the opportunities, right, for public landowners.
Yes.
And how that sort of works. And so we have to look at this population as a whole and try to answer some of these bigger scale questions. Changes in distribution. I'm not going to do that by putting 25 transmitters out.
No.
We got to mark a good representation of the population, and so that's where I'm screaming for help from some of these other states, to kind of get on board.
What struck me, and the reason I asked about the private funding, the reason I brought that up was not. This is all, we're all stakeholders, mm-hmm. State, federal, NGO, individuals. And I just wanted to everybody knows me. I want to bring the point that these landowners who you're trapping on, they are personally benefiting everybody. Mm-hmm. The guy that's writing you on Instagram and contributing $15, $25, man, that is a hunter mm-hmm. digging in his pocket
again.
And go again. Mm-hmm. Good point. Going to conservation, answers that we all want answered, mm-hmm. for an output that we all want to see the future. And that was the only point I was trying to make, yep. is that it just, every time I have conversations with persons like yourself or Paul or anybody else, I marvel at the fact that hunters, in addition to all the excise taxes or the duck stamps or they're still willing to give what they can, because we are stakeholders and we want to see a good result, mm-hmm. a greater output, and
yep.
that was the only point I was trying to
yep.
make.
Yep.
I realize we're all on the same team and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Forrest just slid a question across the desk, and I'd like to know your opinion also. Getting back to hunting pressure, do you have any thoughts on how we might better manage hunting pressure? I mean, do you have any just personal thoughts on what could be done to mitigate hunting pressure and produce a higher quality hunting experience for everybody, north and south, east and west?
I'm almost going to avoid that. I'm going to tell you, I'm a scientist. I'm trying to let the data tell us
let the data guide
what the birds are doing with hunting pressure. And
that's a very good answer.
So my role as a scientist is to try to provide you and provide the agencies with the information. This is what the birds are doing. We think this is how hunting pressure is influencing that. You all make the decisions. Now, I'll tell you what, I've been involved with.
That's a damn good answer.
I've been involved with. I'm a scientist, so I and sometimes I try. Sometimes I get off beat, and maybe sometimes I think some of my stuff I get maybe too much inference, right? Is the data truly telling me? And so I always got to kind of reel myself in on this, because I'll get all wound up about this stuff. But I try to stay reeled in, and my answer there is that the people that make those decisions, I just hope that they're using the data that's available to them to do that, and they do, because I know them. I'm involved with the flyway councils. I go to every February meeting that I possibly can, and I listen in on all that stuff. I listen in to the state and federal agency folks that are banging their head off the wall on a certain thing that they can't. They don't understand why something's happening, or they're trying to make some decisions, but they're thinking about what data they have and what they don't have to justify that. That's where I get my research questions, because I want to try to provide them with what they need to make those decisions. And so those meetings, although I sit back in them a lot of times and don't say much, but it's me listening to the policymakers and the guys that are making those regulations, and so hopefully these data can be used by those guys so that we make good decisions on maybe it's a reduced season. Is it a reduced season just here? Do we need to hunt, not hunt Sunday, Monday, and Tuesdays? I know people in the state that don't hunt their property. We're banding on a place right now that do not hunt on Monday and Tuesday. They don't hunt 2 days a week.
I've seen that out west, out there in the Sac Valley, California, predominantly on state, federal, and a lot of private properties. They have what they call shoot days, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, and they don't hunt during the first split.
Oh,
they just don't hunt. The season comes in on November X, and they don't hunt the first split.
Wow.
And timber. They may hunt them in the field. They don't get in the timber. Are they controlling their own pressure? They had a great season this year.
Wow.
I can tell you how many birds they caught tonight, but they caught 1,600 mallards in 6 days on this property.
Letting those ducks show up and become imprinted on that.
And they're controlling their own pressure, and they're successful, and they're happy. They don't need to kill 4 mallards a day for 60 days to be happy. Mm-mm. They're controlling their hunt. They're letting the birds rest. There's areas that they don't, and a lot of the guys do this in terms of letting some areas on their property rest to try to leave the birds alone. I don't know many private landowners that leave any timber for birds to rest in. Do you?
No.
They'll let the bean field out there, but that duck needs the bean field, and it needs the woods, and it needs 3 or 4 other different types of vegetation cover. It needs a wetland complex, and if we're going to shoot them in every piece of woods in the world that they go into down here, the world is in little South Arkansas world or MAV or whatever that might be. I think guys. I think private landowners ask me. I get guys ask me, how do I ensure? How do I get consistency in my harvest? Maybe that's it. Maybe you need to control your own pressure. Maybe you need to let those ducks in some chunks of let them have some of that woods. That's an important component of the ecology of that bird for pair bonding and bugging and getting acorns.
And just doing ducky things without getting shot at.
Doing ducky things without getting shot at. And so maybe folks that have control of pressure should think about how they can control pressure instead of telling the state agency not to let non-residents come to our state. But you're going to sit there and shoot ducks in your woods for 60 days. And so that's, I shouldn't probably go there and on all that. And so I understand the pressure.
Well, you ain't saying that's the way it should be. You're just saying what if,
Yep.
Sure.
So
I'm gonna ask you. We're wrapping up here, but I've got to ask you this. I thought Forrest gonna have a heart attack this afternoon, and I had to watch him put that bird on the water to make sure he didn't stuff it under his coat, take it home, and raise it as a pet. But in addition, you're targeting mallards. We caught pintail, we caught gadwall, we caught ringnecks, and I'm sure y'all catch all kinds of stuff. But one lonely old coot got caught up in that trap, and y'all banded him. Because if he gets in the trap, you band him.
Yeah. Close
your eyes and envision the person that's going to shoot that bird. What's that phone call going to be? Do you band a lot of coots?
No, we don't. We don't band a lot of coots. We'll usually mark them. I mean, the service is, there's been interest. There's interest.
There are people that hunt them.
There are. That's a hunted species, and it can provide us some. Sorry, it can. We ban them. Did you get bit? I mean, did it scratch you and it about took your eyeball out?
Oh, it was mean as some kind of that little dinosaur.
Yeah, they're brutal on you, man. And I'm going to tell you what, I don't like to get them. And you got to make sure that the kids, I had the first time we caught them, it was warm, it was 50 degrees, and they're all sweating. They got these waders on that, and they're all getting hot and sweaty and taking coats off, and they're rolling their sleeves up because it's 50-something odd degrees, and they got 57 coots in a trap, and I said, y'all probably put your shirt sleeve down there. I'm hot. And the next thing you know, they come out of there all scratched up from it. Their whole arm just scratched from the claws on these things. And another neat funny little story. This is a funny story here. I got a new grad student that came in this year, and we caught a coot. I've never had a coot before. I said, go ahead, get it. I said, be careful, it'll bite you. She turned that thing to look at her face to face and went, wham, smacked her in the lip. That thing bit her lip. She's bleeding. I said, I told you to be careful. She get bit right in the lip. She's gonna kick me in the knee. She hears me. I tell her I won't tell her name on here, but anyway, it's they're fun, man. And so let me just say this. I think the banding program is giving us some data. And I'm a scientist, and we're always trying to think about what we can do with these. There's much more to this banding program, like a much more. We're at we're in North American Waterfowl Management Plan. How do we manage these at the North America at the population level? We're interested in the population. We're interested in the habitat, and the other component of this whole thing is people. And so this banding program for me. To take you out there today and to truly band your first bird, the pintail. You had a Drake pintail as the first bird you banded. I could see the passion. I could see the excitement on your face from that. And I still get excited like that. And we take volunteers out, and these are hunters that are passionate about, and they continue to pull money out of their pocket. And so I guess what I say is the people part of this whole thing, the hunters, getting them out there, getting their kids out there. I got a 10-year-old daughter. I love seeing her out there holding ducks. She's got her favorite species. And doesn't like the mallard because they're too mean and these sorts of things. But that's what drives me. The other thing that drives me, the reason I'm in education, period, is because of these students. I went through college not knowing what I was going to do, sort of found my way, had some neat mentors along the way, and I finally figured it out. But I wish if that mentor would have did, in hindsight now, I think I know how to get, if I had to do it all over again, I know how to get to where I'm at right now. Before this was an accident to find my way here, just following my path of life. The good Lord put me in these certain places, and we did things, and we got here. But I feel like I know how to get these students to where they want to go. So my question is to them: what do you want to do? What's your passion? Who do you want to work for? Can I get you there? And so when I can, I drag them into the lab by the ears and make them work and come knock on my door all the time. That wears me out. I have so much stuff going on, but I never turn the students down. Like I have a hard time just keeping up with things because we got a ton of stuff going on, but I still want those kids coming by because I know how to get them to the next step. And so the experience that they're getting on this banding, I guess this is where I'm trying to get. We're giving them an experience here that's going to make them. They're learning leadership skills, and they got stuff on their CV. They're going to come out of college with a bachelor's degree with some actually a real resume stuff on there, right? And
boots on the ground.
This project for our students is creating experience that I think a lot of universities can't give their students. And so that's why I think, I think we got a neat program here, and I think our students are benefiting from it. And the hunters are benefiting from it. So that's the people part of this thing that I get geared up about. I went into wildlife because I didn't want to talk to people. And now people is what drives me for what I do. I mean, I love the ducks, but these students, like getting them, when I get a phone call from Jeremy Ballard and said, I just accepted a job with Ducks Unlimited. That's what drives me to keep pushing hard. The day my students quit getting jobs in our field and pursuing their passion, I'm walking away from the university.
Amen. Folks, y'all have been listening to Dr. Doug Osborne. University of Arkansas, Monticello. How can they connect with you? I know everybody wants to jump in and follow this great program. How can folks connect with you?
Instagram. I had a student a couple years ago come to me and said, I'm creating an Instagram page. I said, what's Instagram? I said, go ahead, whatever. Just don't get me in trouble. I can't work for the federal government. I get myself in trouble, or the state government. I guess I do work for the state government. Anyway, I said, just don't get me in trouble. She next thing you know, she comes, hey, we got 3,000 people following us. I've been putting pictures of ducks on there. I said, okay. So here we are. We're doing the best we can to share the knowledge and just little bits of information that we can do. And so my kids are posting maps of their transmitter birds migrating and pictures and just little information. So anyway, our Osborne Lab, Osborne_Lab Instagram page was created by our students. It's pretty much student driven. It's about them. It's not about me. I got a job. I love my job. I'm here. I'm doing everything I can to promote them and to keep them active, keep them in this. And so follow us on Instagram and see what the students are doing. And hopefully there's students out there, high school students out there saying, I want to do this. I want to be a waterfowl biologist. I hope they enroll in UAM.
We left the field and on the way over to here, Forrest is talking about, he just got out of college.
Yeah.
He's talking about, well, I wish I'd studied ducks. I might have to go back to school.
Yeah.
No, you got him fired up.
Yeah.
And gosh, it's such valuable information that we need right now.
Yeah.
And you're doing it right.
Thank you.
I'll tell you right now, Doug, you're doing it right. I'm a diehard follower of the Osborne Lab on Instagram. Folks, again, you've been listening to Dr. Doug Osborne, University of Arkansas, Monticello. Thank y'all. I hope we answered some questions. And if we didn't, hit us up in the inbox. Hit Doug up. Hit me up. And they'll be happy to answer more questions. But, hey, thank y'all for listening to Duck Season Somewhere. See you next time.